Hi there, my name is Stephen Roselle. I'm a senior technical specialist at Autodesk, and I'm going to spend a little time going over the updates to XGen in my 2017 Update 3. So what we have here is a game character. This is the hero character from Witcher 3, made by CD Projekt RED, which you've probably seen in a few of our other demos. And you can see here I've got several different grooms, which are based on XGen, that have been applied to this character for different pieces and parts of his hair. So in previous versions of XGen, I wouldn't be able to work with these directly. They would just be previewable, but I would have to use other mechanisms for actually sculpting and refining them. In my 2017, we introduced the ability to actually go in and work directly on these through what are called sculpt layers or sculpt modifiers with layers. Now, if I make that active, I can actually use any of these brushes to go in and begin to manipulate and kind of massage and refine the look of my hair. Now, as I do that, I'm actually working on each individual strand simultaneously. Now we have different tools for this. We have a comb brush, we have a scale brush, we have a noise brush, and so on that allow us to get these really controlled and kind of interesting effects. Now, what I'm creating there doesn't actually look that great, but the cool thing about it is it's non-destructive, so I can actually turn that on and off to remove the effect. What we've done more recently with Update 3 is we've integrated some tools that allow you to use the same workflow for generating game character or real-time character hair. So XGen Interactive Grooming was added in Maya 2017, but more recently in Update 3, we have added some features that allow you to take advantage of XGen Interactive Grooming for generation of game or real-time character hair cards. So we're going to work on the back of the neck for this. So you'll see here I have a separate groom here for the nape of the neck, and it's actually made up of tens or hundreds of thousands of individual hairs, and they're procedurally instanced across the back of the neck. Now, I can go in and I can update these directly with my sculpting tools, but what I can also do is generate a subset of hairs that could then be used to generate cards using something called a linear wire modifier. So I'll apply a linear wire modifier, and with that modifier, I can do a number of things. For instance, I could actually drive this hair dynamically with something like nucleus using a subset of curves, or I can use it to just generate a subset of curves that I can use for ultimately creating geometry. So I'll hide the original instance objects, and you can see I've got these faint traces of kind of orange curves. I'm actually going to grab those and bump up the scale a little bit. So I have to dive into the linear wire node to get the in guide, which is the input curves, basically. And I need to bump that up so I can see it a little more clearly. And then I can go down to a slightly lower level into the base, and I can actually start to modify the density by increasing or decreasing the value. So I can get more or less, basically, instanced a subset of hairs. So I'm actually going to set this down to about a value of 2, which would give me a few hundred probably curves. Now I can go in and I can modify these directly. So I have a sculpt layer where I can actually go in and I can start to edit these by using my various brushes like my comb brush or my soft select / grab brush, where I can just start to paint and kind of refine the shape and look of these hairs. Again, this is all non-destructive. I can also just undo it if I don't like it. But I want to get back and actually add some thickness to this so that I can begin to get an idea of what this would look like as actual cards. So I just have to make sure I select the right node, and then I can basically just paint over these hairs, and I can add width or thickness to the individual hairs. Now I want to do it everywhere, so I'll just apply a flood. And now this basically gets layered on top of the original underlying width node, or width attribute rather. So now I can continue to amplify this. So you can see that as I begin to paint over these, I can start to fill in gaps where I may have them. Something like this, where I see a little bit of overlap that needs to be filled. I'll just continue to add thickness. And then if I need to, I can actually just grab that guide node and go to the attribute editor, and then I can de-amplify or I can amplify that width just with a simple slider value. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. Now, one thing you'll notice is that I'm still seeing this in a really bright orange highlight. This is just a simple node that has a shader on it, which I can modify, change the color, or I can actually add a different shader, like a blend or a Lambert, and then just maybe bump up the brightness of that so that I can kind of start to differentiate between the different hairs, or the different cards rather. So let's go in and maybe add a little bit more thickness to that. I might want to set this up to be like a 1.2 or something like that. And now I want to use some of my other brushes to modify this. So I'll go back to the sculpt layer and I'll show you a few different things I can do. One is a length control, where I can actually go in and I can begin to paint the length of these. So I just want to make sure that I am indeed in edit mode before I do this, and then I'll start to add a little bit of length to this. And now you can see I'm getting a longer series of cards in the back. Now if I undo that, I also have the opposite of this, which is basically a cut brush. So a cut brush is a bit more precise, where I can actually go in and just use the edge of my brush, and I can get a very, very precise line of cut so that I can create this kind of very specific look. If I needed to have a little bit of an arc or a little bit of a curvature in the flow of my hair, I can do that very simply with the cut tool, as you see here. So let's undo that. I'll go back to the original representation, make sure I'm in edit mode, and I'll talk about a couple of other things that I might want to do. I have a smooth brush where I can actually go in here and I can begin to kind of smooth out the placement of these so that I get a little more or a little less overlap. Now I can also go in, of course, to my standard grab brush, and if I just go to the side here, you can see I've got some penetration. All I have to do is just use my standard grab brush to go in and start to manipulate the position of the end points of these curves, or these cards rather, and make sure that I don't have the interpenetration there along the back or along the shoulder. What you'll notice right now is that these actually begin to align with the normal of the camera, rather they're facing the camera. Their normals are facing the camera. I've got an option on the guide description itself where I can actually turn that off, and now you can see that these are going to be static. They're no longer aligning with the camera. So from here I can actually use a twist brush, which would allow me to interactively go in and start to twist these out along a given axis. So if I just go into the default mode here, I can actually just start to interactively twist these in a given direction, and you can see now they're twisting and continuing to push along that same direction. If I turn on the new align to surface option, however, what that will do is it will automatically align whatever card that I paint over with the geometry that it's basically generating from. I can also flood this and just have that automatically happen so that now each one of these hairs or each one of these cards is going to be aligned with the neck of the character. Now the next thing I want to do is actually generate some geometry from this. So right now what you'll see is that the representation I'm seeing now is not actual, they're not actual nodes, not actual geometry in Maya. There's a simple way of doing this. I just simply go to the in-guide node, the description node here, and under my generate options, I have a convert groom to polygon, interactive groom to polygon. Here I can either combine the mesh into one, or I can convert them individually. I could also select individual cards if I needed to, just simply by using the select brush like so and setting my appropriate width, and I could get specific cards that I then wanted to convert. Or I can just choose to convert all of them at the same time and separate them after the fact. You can also set up your UV tiling. Do you want 2x2, or do you want these in quadrants? You could also set joint chains so that each curve or selected curve or card has a joint chain, which is then bound to. So I'm just going to use these settings here. I'll do a conversion. You'll notice that initially my conversion is very high resolution. That's not a problem. All I have to do is delete that. So I can select the lowest level base node, which has the resolution setting for the length of the geometry. So I can set this to something like 6, and that will give me a lower number of divisions along the length. So now I just simply rebuild that. You'll see a subtle shift there based on the change in the length. And then now I just simply go back to my higher level in-guide description node and I convert this into polygons. Once again, I'll use the same settings, do a quick conversion. And now you see I get a much lower res representation of the cards themselves. So now I can actually hide the linear wire here and the XGen representation. And then I can actually go in and select these in the viewport. I can manipulate them if I need to. So if I wanted to get rid of any interpenetrating card, I can just select it and move it, or I can basically come in here and just use my standard manipulation tools to go in and maybe move these out along their normal so that I can manually kind of eliminate any interpenetration if I see it or if I have it. So once I get it looking the way I want, then it's just a matter of applying a texture. So I can just right click if I have a texture in my scene, and I can just apply an existing 4x4 hair texture, which is going to match appropriately the 4x4. Let me turn off the lighting here, the 4x4 UV layout that I created. And now you can see that I get a pretty nice looking hair groom that is ready to go basically for real time. Now I need to modify this a little bit. Let me just show you some of the other conversions that we've done. I'll just disable all of these others here, and we'll just bring back the actual geometry that was created, and there you see kind of the end result. So these are hair cards that were created basically for the top of the head, for the ponytail, and then likewise for the individual strands along the back of the neck. And then we have hero hairs as well, which can also have skeletons associated with them. So you can actually, during the conversion process, you can actually go in and generate skeletons that would then allow you to manipulate the hair either through animation or through some kind of a dynamic joint chain or something like that. So that wraps it up. Hopefully you get an idea now how you can use some of the new features in Maya 2017 Update 3 in order to generate game character or real-time character hair. Thanks. Bye.